Solomon wrote in Proverbs, he said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's why we must be so careful in the words that we also put out. It is very important that men do not suffer in silence and that they do have conversations. At the same time, it is very important with how you frame and how you allow your words to wash over you. If you have those negative thoughts, it's so important to replace it with a thought that is actually going to build you up. It's so important that we don't victimize ourselves with our words and almost weaponize our words against us. We need to find people who we can have these conversations with, but it's also important that those conversations are productive and they're not tearing down.
Joe, my brother, welcome back to the Superhuman Life.
Frank, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm honored to be here again and really looking forward to this conversation. It's one I didn't ever expect to have with you, because we've had many conversations. But I am, due to the events and things that have happened, I'm looking forward to having the conversation with you. So thanks again for having me on.
No, absolutely, man. The honor is definitely mine here, man. I mean, we had you back on, and we'll get to obviously, today's conversation. But anytime we get a returning guest on, we want to kind of unpack a little bit about what brought you here initially. So for those of you guys that are meeting Joe for the first time here today, after this conversation, go and listen to episode 148, where we talk about Joe's journey to building his multiple very successful companies right now, really trusting in God's plan and developing faith in your life. That was kind of the center of what we're talking about there. And Joe's story is really highlighting all of that. But we're going to get into some deeper subjects, some more I don't want to say more meaningful than finding your faith and trusting God's plan for your life. But I think today's conversation hopefully will drive home or hit home with a lot of you guys. So we're gonna get there in a minute. But like I said, Joe is back here with us, episode 148. We made a big announcement about Legendary. At the time, I think you're in the early infancy stages of launching the company. So yeah, Joe, man, that was back in October here. We're 8-9 months removed from that conversation, man. Just bring us up to speed on you, on life, on business, and anything exciting happening with Legendary right now.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Frank. And Legendary Men's Care has definitely, it has taken off like a rocket. I will say that the Lord has definitely been blessing what we're doing. And I believe that's because we're putting out a lot of good in the world and trying to solve a problem that's really been ignored for a lot of men, which is getting rid of all of the chemicals that are inside of men's hygiene products. And we all know the blue goo and all of that stuff is bad for you, right? The body washes that are blue and the toothpaste that's, red, like all of this. We know that the chemicals are bad for us, but where a lot of the misconception is for especially a lot of the listeners who listen to this podcast who are already likely a little bit more health conscious and aware, is that just because there's natural products out there for men, it doesn't necessarily mean that the natural ingredients that are in those products are good for a man's body. And this is something that we've been seeing a lot of lately, a lot of ads going to these super manly brands that are promoting their soaps and their shampoos and their toothpaste. And these products contain lavender oil, tea tree oil, peppermint. All of these things are nature's endocrine disruptors. They're not made in a lab. It is stuff that, it is oils that are natural and supposedly a healthier option, but also wage war on a man's testosterone levels. And so that is a little bit of a background of a need that we saw that we wanted to solve. And so our toothpaste was our first product. That's what we were, talking about on our last show. And that has really taken off. We've almost sold out multiple times if it wasn't by a literal act of God. We've had God intervene in these situations where we've been on the brink of selling out and having another 6 weeks of waiting time. And things just work out with the manufacturer where they're like, oh, hey, yeah, we actually just got everything in. We were able to move you ahead of the line, like all of these different doors opening up for us to not run out of stock. But it's been exciting. I think that we've served close to 20,000 men at this point with our toothpaste. And we've actually just released our shampoo as well, which is a whole nother topic that we can get into about fragrances that are in shampoos. Just about every single shampoo, even natural shampoos on the market, you're going to see this word on the back label, either fragrances or parfum. Okay, both of them are chemical scents that disrupt a man's testosterone levels. And of course, there's all these other ingredients that I can hit on that also do the same that are found in shampoos. But we just released a 9 ingredient certified organic shampoo with Legendary Men's Care, and it as well has quite the head of steam. So I'll just say that things are really moving with Legendary, and it's been a wild ride, exciting, stretching for sure, but it has been just amazing so far.
Yeah, no, that's a great, amazing, man. I want to ask you a couple here questions. Obviously, we're going to get to the mission and I think the story behind Legendary, which is obviously contributing a lot of the success, I believe, right? That's probably a reason why you're getting a lot of favor, because there's such a big mission behind what you're doing there, man. You talked about like this list, man. This like laundry list of things that we are told are good, right? These are nature's products, right? I don't want to go through the entire list, but where can the men, find some of this? Is this something you guys have a resource for, like from an educational standpoint? Like, how do we know, like, just because it's nature, it's not going to be good for us? Like, where do we get this information?
You can actually go on our blog on our website. If you go to legendarymenscare.com, right up at the top, there's going to be a little blog section. And we've gone into depth on exactly what these ingredients are. But here's the thing, and a lot of guys can likely relate to this or remember when, for example, soy. Okay, soy was a product that a decade ago people thought was, oh, this is amazing, like it's healthy, it's good for you, it's soybean and it's natural and like all of this stuff. And now obviously there's a lot of chemical kind of replications and things with soy products, but they're taking this soybean and they're like, wow, this is great, this has to be healthy because it's from nature, when all along it has been increasing estrogen levels in boys and men. And there's you don't really find out until it's too late, right? Moms are giving their young kids soy milk. Guys are eating tofu because it's higher in protein, or maybe a soy, protein powder or something like that. And they don't know what kind of effects they're having on the body. And so what we do at Legendary, we dive into every single ingredient because we want to make sure that there's no endocrine disruptors. And so what we do is we peel back the onion further than what we believe any other company in the men's hygiene space is doing. We're just like, okay, we see the ingredients for what they are. We're going to peel the layer back one more. Okay, now what do we see? And that's how we go about making our decisions. As far as like a comprehensive list, again, I'd say you can check out our blog. But even then, there's still probably many things that we haven't even covered in our blog just because they might not be found in an actual hygiene product, like they might be a food product or whatnot. But this is why we send emails to our customers, putting them in the know. We don't just send emails that are like, hey, go buy this or buy that. We actually have Legendary Monday emails, Legendary Thursday emails. This is all covering different topics of what we believe are the 12 pillars of being a legendary man. And this is something when you jump into our community by purchasing one of our products, you'll be made aware of what we believe those 12 pillars are. And obviously health is one of them. And so we go into more detail about ingredients, food, things to watch out for, other ways to help promote your testosterone levels, or other things that might be disrupting your testosterone. So anyway, man, we're trying to cover all the bases and not just be your typical company that's only talking about hygiene products, but truly helping men live a legendary life.
Yeah, man. And that's amazing, man. I know that's why you guys are going to massively succeed, right? Because I think as we continue to move forward, business, and I love your thoughts on this, right? It's going to get less transactional, more community focused, right? It's like people are going to start to buy their products not from the cheapest thing. They're not just going to click on something and be like, yeah, I saw an ad for this. Like they want to support companies. Hopefully, like people think like this, or maybe this is me trying to inject this way of thinking into people right now. But they're gonna support companies that stand for something outside of just making a great product. They're going to stand for they're going to buy into companies that stand for a mission that is so much beyond the actual physical product. And with you guys, it's like you're building a community, giving guys all the tools they need to become the legends. It's not just about the removal of these products, but it's how are you combining that with proper training, proper nutrition, proper supplementation. So speak more to, kind of the community aspect of what you're building there with Legendary. All right, guys, we'll get back to the episode real quickly, but I wanted to remind you of today's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Legendary Men's Care. Is your toothpaste attacking your manhood? Probably. There's new science that demonstrates store-bought toothpaste may be linked to lower testosterone levels. Now, here's the catch-22. You got to keep your mouth clean, right? Poor oral hygiene is linked to low T and erectile dysfunction. But at the same time, big paste and natural paste options are packed with feminizing, manhood-killing ingredients that crush your confidence. Now, men swallow this stuff every single day when we brush our teeth. No wonder testosterone levels have declined every decade since the introduction of these harsh chemicals in our everyday products back in the 1950s. Now, what's a guy to do? Up until now, there were no options. Yet, with the brand new Legendary Men's Care toothpaste bundle, you can clean your teeth, brighten your smile, and freshen your breath with the only toothpaste carefully crafted just for men. Free of harsh, kick-to-the-nut chemicals found in store-bought paste, and safe from hippie oils and popular natural branded toothpaste that cause increasing moobs. For a limited time, you can get free shipping on your next order of Legendary Men's Care toothpaste, plus an additional 10% off when you use the coupon code REBUILD10. Again, guys, go to legendarymenscare.com right now. Get free shipping plus an extra 10% off your order when you order today with coupon code REBUILD10. Let's get back to today's episode.
Absolutely. So our community probably repels 85% of people, because our community, really, the values that we stand for, you're not going to hear those values from Starbucks. You're not going to hear those values from Target. You're not going to hear those values that we have as a company from some of these other organizations. And to be honest, we've already actually had some email or an email that we sent out related to some current events, and people just do, some people are repelled by our message just because we believe in the strong core family unit. We believe in those traditional values. We're obvious, our entire organization at this point is actually, we're all believers, in the Lord. And it's not like we were looking for people who were believers to hire. It's just that we attracted those kind of men into our world because that's the kind of values that we had. And so that's also the kind of customers that we attract are men who want to be good fathers, who want to be good husbands, who want to be healthy, who want to make decisions for themselves and actually be a fish who swims upstream instead of a fish that swims downstream with all the others. Okay, so it's a different kind of man. So I will say that really separates our community from a lot of other brands and products out there.
Yeah, I wish we could see the audience face right now because I'd love to do a poll. Guys, does that sound like anybody? And I'd love to just see every person's hand that's going up listening to that, right? Because we obviously believe in many of those same values here, right? And that's what we're building. We're building a community of men that want to take charge in life, that want to take dominion, using some of the language from our great friend Josh, right? That know that they're called here for more in this life, but they're looking for the tools and they're looking for the men to run that journey with them. So guys, this is why we got Joe back on. This is why we've partnered in the past with Legendary. And this is why, once again, we're just such a big fan of what you're doing there. Last question on Legendary and business. And then I want to obviously get to the mission and the story behind it. You've obviously been in the digital space for many years, coming up on probably close to a decade now. That's where you and I originally connected, was in the online fitness mastermind that we were a part of. And you've been very successful in scaling your company on the digital side. You mentioned running into some roadblocks though, with ordering, with warehouse inventory. What has this journey, Joe, taught you about business and entrepreneurship, entering into the consumer goods that you didn't learn in the digital space?
It has taught me that I don't know as much as I thought I knew. It has also taught me the value of partnership, because I have an amazing business partner in Legendary Men's Care who is his strong suits are on that side: inventory management, making sure the product quality only gets better and better and better. I think we're on our like fourth iteration of our toothpaste. As we get feedback, we just try to get better and better. He communicates with all the manufacturing and is the head of the innovation of the different products. And so what I would say is, if it was just a one man show, I know for a fact that I would not have done as well of a job in bringing Legendary out into the world as compared to my business partner, Kyle, who's incredibly talented at all of the things that I struggle with, that aren't my strong suits. So I just thank God every day, man, that I have a partner like that. And so I would say that that has been, something I realized early on. I'm like, look, it's not just like I'm here to, to help him because maybe I've had more business experience. No, no, no. Kyle has helped me in so many ways, and he has helped propel Legendary forward, to where it is today and to where we see the vision of where we're going. So I, I would I would say that I've been learning a lot, lots of different challenges, but I'm so glad that I have a partner, a business partner who has the same values. We pray to the same Lord and Savior. We are totally connected in unity, linked arms in terms of the vision of where we're going. And he has such conviction about creating the best products for our customers and giving them the best experience, and making sure that everything where I am weak at, that he is kind of filling in those gaps. So it's been great, a great learning lesson, and I'm grateful.
Okay, I lied, Joe. It's not going to be the last business question. I'm going to ask you one follow up on that, if that's okay. Got a lot of young, ambitious men out there, dreaming of maybe one day starting a business. Hearing that, Joe, I I've never been in business with anybody. I've never had a partner in anything that I've done. I've been high up in businesses that have had some partnership disputes. So I've always come from the place of like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to build it on my own. But hearing you talk about the value of partnership is real eye opening to me. For the young guy out there right now that is maybe not yet taken the leap because he doesn't know the actual next step, would you recommend to a lot of young entrepreneurs starting out to find a partner, or do you think the first venture should be something that you jump out on your own?
So that's a great question. I truly believe the first venture should be on your own, because you need to develop a very specific set of skills. You got to see where you're good, because the worst thing that you can do is go into business with someone who has the same skill sets as you. And maybe you didn't realize those skill sets because you were new to business and you didn't give it a shot where it was just you. And now you have two guys, like I'll give you an example here in Legendary. If you had two guys who were good at marketing, but not so detail oriented on product, then we would be in trouble. We would have good marketing, but we would have a crappy product that no one would want to come back and get, right? So what I would say to that young guy listening is, hey, or whatever age you are, but maybe it's your first business, go in and you will quickly, as you throw yourself kind of in the fire of business, you will see what kind of skills God has given you. And when you find those skills, because I had a business for 6 years before Legendary, and I was able to quickly realize what my skills were. And then when I met Kyle, I realized he's great at all the things that I'm not good at. So this is a valuable partnership. It also helps that for those men of faith, I prayed about partnering with Kyle. We both got our confirmations that we needed, so it was a no brainer. But with that said, even if you have a skill set, and I'm just gonna leave with this here, like that first part, finding your skill set is number one. So I say, do business on your own. But number two is that when you are ready, or you do think it's time for a partnership, tread carefully. Do not jump into that decision because it is like a marriage. And man, I highly recommend that you build a relationship with that person for a much longer period of time than just being like, oh, hey, you're skilled here, I'm skilled here, let's do business together. Typically, I've heard more horror stories around that kind of way of going about it than I have like, we scaled to the moon and exited and all this fun stuff that you think might happen. So, just a little caveat there.
Yeah, no, that's great insight and great wisdom there, man. And I love, the focus in on the development of skills, especially early on in your journey. Because at the end of the day, those are things that you can always fall back on. For me, I'm a great salesman. Like I've been selling and building sales teams since I was 21 years old. So I know with certainty, like if this stuff doesn't work out with Superhuman Life and Rebuilt, like there's a sales job, somewhere. And I'm super well connected in my network now that I could probably walk into many companies and take over sales leadership, sales director type of role. If you guys want some help though on the development of skills and more focus in and on this part of the conversation, definitely go back and check out episode 148 because we talked about Joe's journey of developing the copywriting skill, how that's set up to succeed in the business, and we really focus in on that. So episode 148, guys, we'll plug it down there in the show notes. But Joe, I want to transition, man, and I want to get into the story, the journey, and the mission behind Legendary. And I think they kind of kicked this off. I'd love for you to talk about the significance of a number and a date, and that number being 105. So I'd love for you to explain the significance of the number 105 in alignment with the journey and the mission of Legendary, right? Number 105 can mean a lot of things, but hopefully you know what I'm talking about when I say the number 105. In the date, I'd love for you to talk about a phone call that you received on January 25th of 2022. So you take that and however you want to run with it, we'll transition into the second part of this conversation. So 105, January 25th, 8 o'clock, you received a phone call.
Absolutely. Well, I will start with the January 25th, 2022 phone call, as that'll kind of lead into the 105. So on that night, I received a phone call. My wife handed me the phone. On the other line was my little brother. And I received a phone call that my dad had taken his life. Okay. And this was something you never expect as a son. You just, as a son who my wife was pregnant with our second, you think about, I have two kids. One of them has already spent lots of time with Papa, and you have his granddaughter on the way, and you never expect to get a phone call like that, even when someone's going through some tough times. And I know my dad was going through some tough times. I want to preface everything that I say by saying that I honor my dad so much that it can be difficult to talk about this because I never want it to seem like I'm showing his most rock bottom moment, because that's what this is. But knowing that these conversations can be turned around for good is why we decided to have this conversation, Frank. So to kind of jump back into the story, I just remember leaping off. I had, I think it was my dog was on me or whatnot, just laying on my chest, and I remember leaping up, sitting up, and screaming, and my wife was freaking out, like what's going on, and I it was like everything just went just totally dark. It's like, I don't even remember really the things that were said after that, um, except for my little brother sharing some of the details of how it happened. And it was, you think about it, on a cold winter, in Illinois where my dad was living, what took place, it's traumatic to think about. And I've never been sick to my stomach to the point of almost throwing up from bad news. But I was right there at that point. Um, and so got that phone call at this point, just to kind of keep the thread going with where we were with Legendary and what our mission has become and why we're actually having these conversations now. My dad was very supportive of Legendary Men's Care. He knew what we were doing and what we were working toward. My dad was an incredible support system my entire life. I always tell people I'm so lucky, blessed that I grew up and never had a father void in my life, because no matter what I was doing, whether I was playing football, whether I was in a metal band. Yes, that's true. I was in a metal band and we're rocking out in the basement of our house, or starting businesses. My dad was always supportive. Even if he didn't always agree with certain things, he was always supportive. And I would always share with him just what's going on with our businesses. And I shared Legendary with him, and he was super excited. He was like, Joe, I'm so excited for this, what you guys are doing, and the products. This is going to be amazing. You're going to help so many lives. And after my dad took his life, that led me into a journey, still kind of on this journey of like unpacking like why and how could I have helped, or how could I have seen this coming. And it's wild because I was looking up, I think it was just a few months later, I was looking up warning signs of to know, if someone is going through that, if they're depressed, if they're suicidal. And I was shocked to find that when men stop brushing their teeth, it's actually a way of, committing this little like self harm, to themselves by not taking care of their hygiene, not taking care of their oral health. And my dad, for years, he stopped brushing his teeth. He only used I think it was called Banaka or something like that, some sort of mouth breath spray, and that was it. And so I don't think it's I think it's there's a divine reason that we started with toothpaste that I didn't know at the beginning, that eventually it kind of like came to this, not full circle, but kind of part circle of like, okay, I see how there's a connection here between the first product that we came out with and what our mission is now evolving into. And to go into that number 105, if you're actually watching on Frank's YouTube channel, you'll see a number 105 that's behind me. And so, again, in kind of unpacking all of this and researching more on suicide, male suicide, I found that 105 men on average, and this number actually shocked me because I didn't think it was that many. In terms of, I didn't think there were so many men that were committing suicide every day in the United States. Okay, and that number is 105. Okay, and so out of those 105 men, 7 to 10 others who are closely connected in that family are affected by that decision. Okay, so you think about, there's kids, there's a spouse, there's parents, there's there's this ripple effect. And really, we know this. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what Scripture says. And so we can know that not only is he trying to destroy a man, a person, he's trying to destroy the family. And I will say this is kind of going off in a somewhat of a slightly different direction, but one of the ways that he does that is by trying to sow seeds of bitterness. When you find out that someone took their life, you begin to look at, okay, what caused him? Who caused him to make this decision? And those right there are seeds of the enemy to try and plant seeds of bitterness to suck you into this wake of destruction, instead of just allowing the Lord to bring healing into the situation. So that's a conversation that we could have another time or maybe later on in the call. But that number 105 has become a mission of Legendary Men's Care. Honestly, it's actually our mission right now to lower that number to 104. And what's that going to take? That is going to take us somehow, some way reaching enough men where 365 men either reached out to us or some way we're able to generate that type of information where we would know that we're able to help 365 men make a decision to keep going, keep their flame burning. And that's what we want to be a part of as a company, is not just providing products that obviously help with the man's confidence, obviously gets rid of all of the endocrine disruptors and the things that lower testosterone levels. We all know that low testosterone is very much connected to depression and low energy, low motivation. So we have that tie-in of helping a man physically with his chemistry. But with that said, as we were talking about with our community, we want to be able to provide emails and things that encourage every man that comes into our community. We want to be the gasoline where we're just a big old bucket of gasoline. And it's like dumping gasoline right on their fire, and their fire is burning brighter and longer and stronger. And so, Frank, that's kind of, I know I've said a lot there, so I want to kind of open it back up to you.
Yeah, no, that's all good, man. And Joe, I appreciate you so much, man. And I know this is not the easiest thing, but when you reached out and you kind of shared, the one document that you sent to me, and you told me a little bit about the story and the journey, my immediate thought was like, yes, we have to have this conversation, right? And I'll share a little bit about kind of my personal experience with suicide in my life. But when I read that number, when I saw that number 105, and it was shocking. I think most of us will have heard the number 22, the amount of veterans that take their life. And obviously there's a whole nother gamut that's kind of a part of that, right? With the trauma these guys see, what they have to experience and go through, especially if they've been in combat. So that number 22 is a massive number that is talked about, but we're talking about, 83 more individuals here, right? Guys that haven't been thrust into some of the darkest places of evil, guys that haven't been exposed to death on the front lines. These guys are struggling internally. So I love to maybe get, some of the signs, because obviously we want to reach the men that are struggling and have them reach out, but we want to equip the audience with tools as well to look for in the men in their lives, in their fathers, in their brothers, in their friends. You talked about the stopping of the brushing of the teeth as an early warning sign. But you'd also said that for your dad, there was some depression and maybe he had gone through some difficult times. Was there any, reflectively looking back, right, Joe? I know you obviously weren't thinking about it in the moment. Were there signs that he was passing off to you, maybe not intentionally, but in things that he was saying, in some of the language that he was using, that if you had been looking for some of these things, would you have been able to see them?
I believe so. I believe so. And some of those things, I know one of them was his language changed. He was becoming a different person. And so this obviously isn't going to relate to everyone. Because obviously there's men who take their life and they might be a little bit more reserved of expressing the kind of pain that they're going through or suffering that they're going through. My dad and I had many difficult conversations just about areas where he was not happy with where he was in life. So I will say that about 10 years before he took his life, he had lost his job, which he was very good at his job. He was someone who was really a high performer, great energy. He could always make a room of people laugh. Incredible, extrovert type of a person. And to be honest with you, there's times I'm like, if I could ask my dad, go back to and just ask him a few questions, I'd be like, Dad, what is that? Like, what is that quality that you have that is just like you can strike up a conversation with anyone. You can be standing in an elevator with four people and it's dead silent, and you'll actually, you'll say something to break the silence, and it's actually not like awkward or weird. It's like funny. You've made everyone's elevator experience better. He was just one of those guys. And but he, over the years after he lost his job, it was tough for him to, I think, find that thing. You talk about purpose a lot on your show, Frank, and like it was tough for him to find where he was going to plug himself back into the world after having this job for 30 years, and now it's gone, and now you're trying to find, okay, where do I apply my skills? And you could see a void. You could see that he was looking for something there. And I would say that I will preface all of this by saying, and this is something we talked about before the show, Frank, is, I'm not a psychologist, so this is not a psychology podcast. This is a guy who lost his dad and who is trying to put the pieces together to try and help other families not lose their dads, and at the same time let other men know who are watching and listening that you absolutely matter, even if you do not hear it from your kids enough, if you don't hear it from your wife enough, if you don't hear it from your coworkers or your boss enough. You absolutely matter, and the world without your presence is there is a void. There is a void that lingers. There's a void that still lingers in my family during holidays, during just thinking about, having our kids and thinking about meeting with the grandparents and one of the grandparents not being there, right? There's these things that only you can fill. So seeing someone lose their zest and passion for life, that was definitely something. Like I mentioned to earlier, his language changed. He was more angry. More now again, each person might be different, but my dad was he was more angry. He was more bitter. He was more on edge. I was trying to encourage him and share things with him, and all of the conversation would flip to a negative lens. And looking back on it now, I realized that he lived in that negative lens. Okay. I might hear it in just short little conversations with him that I was having, texts, but imagine a person's world where they're actually living in that. And that really, it's sad to think about, gut wrenching even. Um, so yeah, Frank, I think, and obviously, we talked about the brushing the teeth, but just hygiene in general, and just letting yourself go in terms of your appearance and whatnot. That's another red flag that I found as I was doing some more research.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Joe. As you're describing your dad, man, I'm like, dude, he sounds a whole lot like my dad. Except for the fact that my dad's gonna say something in the elevator that's gonna be completely awkward and uncalled for, but it's gonna make everybody remember him. And I think the trait that he possesses that enables him to do that is his what we call the give a shititude meter is at a zero. Like my dad gives zero F's what anybody thinks about him. He's just going to be himself, whether he's having a conversation with the barista at the coffee shop, the cashier at the grocery store, or an elevator full of people. Like he's just going to be Frank Rich Sr. and you're going to accept him for who he is, or you're not, and that's just who he is. But there's a lot of kind of common similarities, and I can just hear the respect and love that you have for your dad. So that's awesome, man. And I think the talk of the language, right? I think the words that we use reveal a whole lot about, the lens that we're seeing the world through. So there's something really practical for the audience to go with, right? If you got somebody that, you have thoughts or, you're like, maybe had this insight that they might be struggling, begin to listen to the words that they use, how they describe their experience of life. It'll give you real keen insight into the world and how they're seeing it, the lens that they're seeing the world through. So I'm glad that you really added that bit on there.
I mean, Frank, what you're sharing is a biblical principle. It's what Solomon wrote in Proverbs. He said, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." And so this is a a true thing that is in the earth that was said from a man who is given wisdom from the Lord and that he wrote in Proverbs. And from that place, we can, that's why it's so careful that we must be so careful in the words that we also put out. And it's important not to put those here's where we're at. And here's the very tricky part about these different conversations as men. Okay. Because right now, you and I are having an open conversation about male suicide, and we are saying that it is very important that men do not suffer in silence and that they do have conversations. But at the same time, it is very important with how you frame and how you allow your words to wash over you. You know, do not say that, some of the stuff that my dad was saying was so difficult to hear, but it's things that he began believing about himself, and he would say them out loud. And he's basically taking a bath in dirty water coming out of a shower faucet is basically how you think about brown water coming out of a shower faucet. And that's what you're cleaning yourself with. That's the power that your words have. So it's important to have these conversations, to seek help. Of course, it's also, I can also say that for any man who is struggling in this area, as you change your words, as you change what you're saying over yourself, as you change what you're saying over your situations, that things can begin to get better. And it's amazing how powerful words are. So just putting that out there, that as we have these conversations, it's important not to just belittle yourself and say these, horrible things, and, begin talking about, how or what, or just all these different scenarios of where your mind might go. If you have those negative thoughts, it's so important to replace it with a thought that is actually going to build you up and that is pointed toward you having a future, and a good future. If your marriage isn't what you want it to be, and let me tell you, there's so many marriages struggling. So behind closed doors, there's bitterness, there's arguments, there's words that are being said, and there's power in those words. The way that one might talk to a spouse, the beliefs one might have to a spouse that they tell themselves, that they speak out loud when they're with their friends, having lunch, speaking about a spouse in a certain way. It just goes to show that there is power in words. And out of the abundance of the heart, we mentioned this earlier, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. As we have these conversations about what we're struggling with, it's so important that we don't victimize ourselves with our words and almost weaponize our words against us. Because anyone listening can probably already know this. Things do not get better as you keep using negative words and speaking death over a situation instead of life over a situation, over a relationship, over a business, or whatever it is, whatever you're going through, that that you can either build yourself up and look toward a brighter future and go there with your words and allow that to change who you are and what you're saying, changing what you're believing, and look through a lens of hope, even when it's difficult. And so I will say that as we have these conversations, it's so important that, yes, we need to find people who we can have these conversations with, but it's also important that those conversations are productive and they're not tearing down, but they should be conversations that build you up.
Yeah, and guys, if you're looking for some practicality tips and kind of some of the science behind what Joe is speaking to here, go listen to episode 208. We talked about the importance of language. And actually, so Joe, I had a hypnotist on, professional hypnotist. Also, trained in NLP, like not a hypnotist for like a magic show, but somebody that works with professionals, like works with pro athletes, help them lock some of these limiting beliefs. And it's all dictated around the language that he uses. Well, he was coaching me literally as I was doing the call to action on the end of the podcast. Like, Frank, that's why you're not getting reviews, because of little word choices that if you interject and use the right one, you understand this with copywriting, right? The power of a replacement of a word. So guys, go check out episode 208 with Dom the hypnotist. But what Joe is speaking to here is a big part of the work that we do with our men. So many of these guys have been struggling with a pornography addiction for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, somewhere in their belief system, like they don't think they're ever going to be able to break through. And that comes across in the words that they use, in little things like, I'm not free yet, as opposed to, I'm never going to be able to overcome this. I'm struggling, but I can, as opposed to, I'm never going to be able to break free from this. Little changes in the words, in the precision with the language that we're using, can really unlock a lot in our lives. So I'm glad we're touching in on this. Joe, you had mentioned in January of 2022, you were already in, I don't know if it's a development stage. I don't know if you're already selling Legendary Men's Care at that point. Where was the company at in January when you got this news, and how did hearing the news obviously change everything with at least your part of the mission behind it?
Absolutely. So the company was only about 4 months, like really, yeah, I think 4 months since inception of it. So it was still so early on. And the thing is, and this is kind of interesting now that I'm saying this out loud, but when I started my first company, the fitness company, like my goal was to help people like my dad who were out of shape and trying to help them, lose weight, build muscle, feel confident, get their testosterone levels up. We know how important that is for men. And it's interesting now, I'm just like saying this out loud, that how this company has evolved for it. Yes, we were wanting to help and serve men, but it didn't have the deep kind of mission that it has now after the impact of my dad taking his life. And now I find that I'm coming back to another business that is for men, not necessarily for men like my dad, in the fact that Legendary Men's Care is not necessarily for men who are struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts. Like it's not like we're niched down to something along that nature. We want to serve all men. Okay. We want to serve all men. And the thing is every man, and I touched on this just a little bit earlier, every man has a flame. Behind me is the number 105. And there's 105 men, and their flame has been extinguished. It's gone out. It's no more. But there's millions of men around the world. Some have huge flames. They don't deal with that, they don't deal with depressive thoughts. They're operating in their calling. They feel fulfilled. They might have a great marriage. They might have a great family, whatever it is. They have a huge flame. And then there's some men who are just trying to make it to the next day. They might have a smaller flame. Maybe they're missing a little bit of fulfillment in their life. Maybe marriage is tough. Maybe family life is tough. They've just been through the ringer, man. And they have a small flame. But regardless, our role as Legendary Men's Care, our mission is to be the gasoline that we can pour on any man's flame. If it's the guy who's already got a giant flame, then boom, we're going to make it bigger, because he's going to thrive with his health. He's going to be kicking out all these chemicals. He's going to be feeling really confident using products that he knows is good for his body as a man. And then we have the guy who might have a smaller flame. Well, guess what? We want to be the gasoline that dumps all over that flame, and boom, that flame is bigger. Okay, it's shining brighter. He's more confident. He's starting to get, he's starting to get his mind right. He's feeling his testosterone getting, better as he's implementing the 12 pillars of being a legendary man. His family life is getting better. His connection with his spouse. he's obviously becoming more healthy as he's getting rid of these chemicals that that can wage war on a guy's manhood. So all of these different things for us is legendary. We look at every man, and it's funny if you think about it. Like, I can look out my window and I can see guys working on a house across the street from us, and inside of them I like to picture like these flames. Each man is like walking around doing their job, and there's flames in all of them. And it's really our mission as a company now to just boom, pump it with gasoline and just be in your corner, be your Sherpas to help you live a legendary life. Because I think deep down, every man wants to live a legendary life, and that can look different. For some, it's like owning these big businesses. For others, is being the best grandpa in the world. For others, is being a great dad and a great husband, and like they love their 9 to 5, and they're going in, they feel fulfilled and being a part of a vision and something bigger than themselves. Like, there's so much, man, but we just want to be a part of really igniting that in men.
Yeah, I love that distinction there that everybody's flame, is going to burn and shine a little bit differently, and it kind of took me to this imagery of like, ever walk into like a well lit, like ballroom or kind of like a theater, and the theater's so well lit, and you look across the ceiling and kind of the entire room, and it's this collection. It's not one big light that's producing all the light in this room. I think studios, or I attend a big mega church. Like, this is a great example here, right? Because they got obviously the lights that are like guiding on, that are shining on the pulpit, but then they got the lights that are shining on the worship stage. But then behind the worship, they got all these different lights that are creating an ambience and creating a theme and kind of an environment. It's like the integration of all of those little lights is what's creating this masterpiece. And like, we don't all need to have the 8-figure company shining bright inside of us, like, because if that's all the world had, like, it may be too bright for all of us, so we need everybody's flame burning. And as you're sharing that kind of like the light burning inside of the men across the street working on the house, it took me to this movie. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake.
I've not seen it.
Okay, so quick, kind of pivot here, because I think it'll drive the point home. The movie In Time, so it's in the future. It's kind of this created reality, but instead of money, our most valuable asset is our time. And there's like 4 different worlds that people all live in within this one world. And to get into like the next world, like, you got to go through, like, you got to pass through this wall, and they take time away from you. And the low income people, the people that I guess their flame would be burning small inside, right, would be the analogy here. Like, they work today for tomorrow's time. Like, they literally, like, they'll work manual labor jobs. At the end of the day, they go stand in a line, and they get this scan, and you see the meter on their arm go from like 2 minutes to like 24 hours, literally meaning they haven't told end of tomorrow's shift to create more time. Where you got the person that, would be a Jeff Bezos type of person, his meter on his arm is basically infinite amount of time. And I think, the infinite amount of time would be that light shining in all of us. Like, we may not have all of the rest of eternity to live here, but that's what's going to create the meaning. That's what's going to create the joy, the excitement, and the passion. The brighter that flame is shining from inside of you. So really powerful kind of imagery that you gave there, Joe. And I love, speaking to, like, we're not here to help men that are struggling with depression. If you're living in darkness, getting some natural toothpaste is probably not the answer that's going to change and turn your life around. And anybody that thinks that, we need to catch them and we need to get them moving in the right path. But it's the stacking of these 12 pillars, right? So can you talk about what the 12 pillars are and why that makes a complete legendary man?
Absolutely. So the pillars range. Like, for example, one of our pillars is sleep is the foundation of a great day. And as for to
Both
be a
as a
legendary,
reward and as a way to set it up. I'm sorry, man.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if you think about being a legendary man, it does require, and I'm sure you've had multiple episodes or conversations about the importance of sleep and how it not only affects a man's testosterone levels, but it affects so much more related to their health. It affects their productivity. It affects their mind. There's so many good things, and so we realize that, okay, if a man can finish his day well, and also that be kind of the focal point of, hey, I know sleep is the foundation of a great day. So I'm going to go to bed at the right time. I'm going to kind of do my things to wind down, get rid of the blue light, all of those different things. Basically, having that pillar allows us to speak in that area to the men in our community about some things that they can do to improve that area in their life. And so another one, we look at fearless fatherhood. So that's one of them. Not all the men who come in our community are fathers, but we can take that pillar as well. And so we go from sleep to fatherhood. Okay, this is a much deeper topic than sleep. It requires this inward reflection. It requires so many different things about what is being a fearless father to you. And I just wrote an email to our list about something that I've been doing, that I wanted to encourage the other fathers who were in our community with. And not, again, not everyone's a father, but for those who are, we believe that it will help them, and for those who will become fathers, that we believe that it will help them be a father where their kids look at them and say, wow, I want to be just like him. And really, that's where it was with my dad. I mean, I admired a lot of qualities about him. There's things that I think all of us can take from our parents, no matter what age that you are, and if your parents are still around. You can look at qualities and be like, okay, this is something I like to do differently and see like different in my life. But then there's like the qualities where you're like, man, I wish I had a double dose of that, because that is just an exceptional quality. And my dad had many great qualities. So I'll just say that the pillars that we have, and you can actually go to our blog, you can go to legendarymenscare.com. Again, there's a little up in the right hand corner, there's a little blog button you can click on, and you'll see what the 12 pillars of being a legendary man is. And that's what we believe. And the one thing that's really important that I'll say with that is that these 12 pillars, none of us have arrived fully to all the 12 pillars. And so it's really important that when men join our community, this is something that we share with them. These 12 pillars, if you're missing the mark in several of these, it doesn't mean that you're not on your way to living an extraordinary, legendary life. And it doesn't mean that you should feel down or look at yourself as any less. If anything, you should be proud of the man when you look in the mirror, because you're reading these 12 pillars and you're saying, that's an area that I'm not perfect in at all. That's an area that I missed the mark in, and to reflect on that and have the humility to be like, okay, this is something that I can work on in my life to live up to who I want to be in this area. And so that's something we always share, that as you're reviewing the 12 pillars of being a legendary man, that it's not that we've arrived. I've certainly not arrived. Okay, I'm 33. I have certainly not arrived, and I've certainly not lived a full life yet. Okay, and so I look at those pillars and I say, okay, here's where I can do better. Here's where I can do better. And we hope that it challenges men. And Frank, we talked about the ripple effect of suicide in the family when a man takes his life, father, a dad, a husband, just a male, it takes his life, the ripple effect it has on the family. Well, we can look at what kind of ripple effect is there in a family when a man is living by these 12 legendary pillars. What does that mean for their kids? What does that mean when they're for their career, or for their kids and what they're leaving behind, their legacy? What does it mean for their relationship with their spouse? We believe that everything in their life will get better. What does it mean for their health, for their fitness, for their confidence? What does it mean for their sleep? What does it mean? We believe that it has this ripple effect that is so positive, and just will do so good to the men in our community, for the men in our community. And so that's one of the reasons we have those, is because, again, we want to go beyond just, hey, avoid these chemicals, which is very important, okay, because there is a lot of chemicals that you and I have been ingesting and consuming and using in our products and putting on our skin that we had no say in. We had zero say in it at all until now, which we believe that we are truly the most genuine um, man friendly, pro man, whatever you want to call company in terms of how we create our products. So now we believe there is a better option. But now if you put in the products with the 12 pillars, I think that creates for an amazing transformation in any man.
Yeah, that's incredible. And guys, we'll get Legendary Men's Care once again linked down there in the show notes. Check out the blog. Buy some products, guys. Test the toothpaste out. Once again, it's not going to radically transform your life, but for you guys that are checking those boxes, right? You got the training in place. You're optimizing your sleep. You're checking all these other pillars. Like this is the last. This is one of the last things that needs to be fully checked off. And I love, Joe. I agree 100% about we've not yet arrived. I mean, that sits at the ethos of everything that we're doing here with the Superhuman life. Living a superhuman life is about the intentional pursuit of becoming the man that God has called and created you to be. And that means that there's potential resting and living inside of us that we need to figure out, A, what that potential is, what do we need to do to develop it, and then how do we bring it in service to the world to help and serve others. But potential means that there's more left in you. And I believe we all have potential until the day that we're taken. So yeah, none of us are arrived. And once again, that's why we've brought Joe back on here, because we're such a fan of everything that they're doing over there at Legendary, because their mission runs right in line with developing men. Because like he said, you build strong men. This is why our mission at Rebuilt Recovery is not about helping men become or overcome pornography addiction. It's about making men better men, because better developed, stronger men don't struggle with pornography addictions. Better developed, stronger men pursuing purpose and pursuing passion don't fall into a category of 105. Better men that are chasing purpose, that are serving the world, don't find themselves at the bar at 5 o'clock when they should be at Tony's little softball or little league game. So those are the men that we're calling, is the ones that want more out of life. So Joe, as we drive it home, man, any final words to the guys out there? Give them an action step. Obviously, guys, share today's conversation. We ask you every single week, but this one is a little more meaningful, right? So whether you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, somewhere there's a button in there. It's going to look like three little buttons, or maybe a share symbol. Click on that, and you don't even need to do anything. You could share these conversations from inside the apps that you're listening to. Tag me on social media at Coach Frank on Instagram. Tag the podcast at The Superhuman Life. Just those two will get over 20,000. We'll reshare it. So over 20,000 people will see your message. And tag Legendary Men's Care as well. And I'm sure Joe will be happy to share this as well. But Joe, as we drive this home, final thoughts, final words. Once again, thank you for coming on and talking about something that is so close to home for you and is so important in your work and everything you're doing. And thank you for getting vulnerable and talking about that here as well. But yeah, take us home here today, man.
Absolutely. In terms of call to action, I would say exactly what you said. I would say share this podcast episode, because this isn't a conversation that a lot of men are having. And what we want to do is, with what Frank and I are talking about, like I said at the beginning of this interview, is I never expected to be having an interview over this subject matter. And it just so happened that that's how things in life shook out, for my dad. And so what I would say is part of helping men, whether there's so many men who are listening to Frank's podcast who are looking for that thing that's deeper. They know that there is something deeper, or they feel like they're lacking something. So I would say share this episode, rate the podcast, do all those great things so the message can get out more. And so more men can be like, okay, someone, people get me. It's okay to have I feel this way, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's a way through. And that's kind of where the parting words I will say here, and this is what I alluded to earlier, and I'll just say it again to hit it home. You matter. As a son who lost his dad to a tragic event, and feeling the effects and being in the funeral and seeing how many people were there and were impacted and loved him, even though he might not have known how much, how many people supported him, how many people were actually in his corner, But when you look out in the room as you're standing there and you're speaking about your dad from a stage, and you got his pictures everywhere on the walls and the flowers and the arrangements and the seats are totally full, and you're like, wow, my dad had an impact in the community. He had lots of friends. There were lots of people who were in his corner, and I don't know if he knew that. And so I just want to say that you matter. Your presence matters more than you know. People need you around more than you know. But guess what? Even if you don't, I don't ever want your motivation to be to do it for someone else. Man, live your life for you. You have a purpose. You don't need to live it for your kids. I love my kids, man, but I know that I'm here for a purpose. I love my wife so much, but I know that I am here for a purpose that God has put inside of me. And being a great husband and an awesome father is part of that purpose, but that's not it. That's not the only thing. And so I will say that any man who's listening, that you have a very specific set of gifts that God has given you. He's given you a purpose for your life. And I will say that if you are stuck in a place of darkness, the light is Jesus Christ, and you can look to him and you can have those conversations with him. Let me tell you, he's not afraid of your depression. He's not afraid of your suicidal thoughts. He will heal you if you ask him to. And guess what? I bet he's going to show you a lot of the things that the darkness has been hiding, of where your gifts and your talents and your purpose is. So I just want to leave you with that. I could just go off another 10 minutes, I think. But honestly, Frank, I'm honored to be here. Love all of you guys, for those who are listening and watching. And we hope to help you make an impact in the world and live the legendary life that you want. We hope that you really took something great away from this episode.
Yeah, Joe, no, I'm grateful for you, brother, man. And I remember July of 2017, we're sitting in a conference room up in Toronto, in this grand hotel, first time leaving the country to go to this business mastermind. Who am I going to meet? You got some meatheads in there, you got some ex-athletes, then you got this quiet guy that's kind of sitting there in the corner, plugging away at the laptop. But, when you get to kind of open up and you kind of peel back a layer, you get inside his heart a little bit, man. God, it's such an honor, man, to call you a dear friend and have done many things together over the past. And when you reached out about this, man, it was a conversation that I knew needed to be had. And I'm sorry you had to go through what you did to lead us to having this conversation. But I know Dad's looking down on everything that you're doing, and Dad's looking down on Legendary, and he's so proud of the movement and the mission. And 20,000 men at this point already being reached and impacted through the products, and that's just a small piece of the impact you're truly going to have. So guys, we appreciate you. If you've stuck with us up until to this point, it shows a lot about your character and the type of man that you are. And for anybody that has lost somebody in their life, we feel for you. I was touched by suicide very early in my life. By Before I was a teenager, I had a family member, a cousin, just a handful of years older than me, took his life. Something that not something that a young boy shouldn't have to process. What do you mean take your life? And a couple years later, I had another family member take his life as well. And you talked about maybe not seeing signs in your dad. I talk a lot about my dad, the role that he's played on me and how much I love him to this day. But my dad's lived a tough life, man. He's blue collar kind of guy, worked hard, always provided for the family, struggled with some vices in his life. Struggled with going through, split with my mom when I was in high school there. And I got a firsthand access to a guy really, really struggling, man. And I'll be completely honest, man. Like, I've confronted it. I've actually thought about what it would be like to walk into your dad's room and you find him. So these are things that I've dealt with and have to go through, and it's been a part of a journey that I've been on and a part of a healing. But I've never really talked about these things because I didn't know really how to set that conversation up. So, Joe, I'm grateful for you, man. But I couldn't find stats on the amount of families and the percentages of families that are impacted by suicide. But I'm assuming it's a very large number of people. Maybe it's not been directly in your home. Maybe it's been first layer, second layer, third layer of people that but it's real. And we're losing 105 men every single day. And we need that number to go down. And it starts with this conversation. So, Joe, once again, thankful for you, man. I love you, brother. Guys, we thank you. Let's get this one out there. Let's share this. Let's get this in as many people's ears as possible. Go check out the blog at Legendary Men's Care, and continue to level up, guys. Continue to pursue becoming the man God has called you to be. Find that flame inside of you and light it as bright as you possibly can, because those that need to see it will see it. I got nothing else here, guys. We love you. Joe, thankful once again, man. And we'll see you guys next week.